Hi, I have a review this time for PortraitPro 12. It's a Studio Edition. There's 3 versions. There's a Standard Edition, Studio, and Studio Max. I'll explain more about that later. This is the latest version at the time I'm making this review, which is 12.5.2. It's a program for taking your portraits of people, your photographs, and enhancing them. Now, I'd like to clarify to begin with that some people think that that it automatically does face morphing, such as making a person's nose shorter or thinner, or changing somebody's face from being quite round to really slim looking. Yes, you can do all those things, but you don't have to. You can make very minor to very major changes. So if you want to, all you can do is open it up, maybe take out a few spots on somebody's skin, or add a bit of lipstick, whatever, and not really do much else. Or you can do all that. You can apply basically makeup, and you can remove spots, and you can shorten the nose, thin their face, stretch their neck, shorten the length of their nose, all sorts. But you don't have to. There's presets which will do various things it thinks it wants to do itself, such as make a face thinner, but you don't have to. You can start completely from scratch and change lots of sliders, or you can take a preset as a starting point and then change a few sliders, whatever you want to do. Let's start off by having a look at preferences. Quite a lot of preferences here. You can add a suffix to the end of a file to distinguish it from the original. So if you had something called like man1 or whatever, it will then put this man1_pp or whatever you change it to here. Then we have various other options, such as use a dark interface. That's the default. I've got it off because I prefer a bit brighter interfaces. You can automatically find faces and images or not. You can automatically find their gender and their age. That's off by default, if I remember correctly, but I have it on and it seems to work reasonably well. And there's various other options, such as show an enhanced skin only button, or show tooltips. Check for updates each time you launch automatically or not. I'd leave most of this on, and most of it was on by default. Color, what sort of color space do you want to work with? I prefer just to let it pick what the actual original photo file had itself. So if you open one and it's using Adobe RGB, which is what I normally take pictures in, it'll detect that itself. Or if it uses sRGB, it'll detect it. So I like to leave it as that. Now, for bit depth here, normally I think if I remember rightly, the default was 8-bit faster. So if you have a very slow computer, it will work a bit faster. But I have changed it to use bit depth as input picture. Use the same. So what it will do is it will use the same bit depth that your original photograph had. It might be a bit slower, it might be a bit of a harder hog on your computer, but I think it's best to work with the best quality you can. High performance display, basically it's high DPI, such as a Retina display on a MacBook Pro. We have language, select English if you want, select French, or just let it automatically detect. It was on automatic. I haven't bothered to change it to English. I've just left it on automatic and it has worked great. No problems there. You can run a plugin installer, so if you have Photoshop, etc., it will add a plugin into that program, so you can launch. So you can say, go to Photoshop, you've got your photo there, you can then tell it to launch a plugin, so then it will open that photo from Photoshop into this program, then once you're done, it will put it back into Photoshop, and it also works with Aperture. However, Aperture is a Mac-only program, so if you're watching from Windows, it's relevant anyway. Plus, not only is it irrelevant if you're a Windows user, but also if you're a Mac user, you might not want to use this if you don't already, because it is being discontinued by Apple. So Aperture, really, you might want to forget for now. And also, I would then, because Aperture is being discontinued, I would prefer to see a plugin instead for Affinity Photo, which is not by Apple. It's made by another company, but it is very similar to Photoshop for about £40. I think it's about $50. I've reviewed it previously, and it's a lot like Photoshop. So it'd be good to see an Affinity Photo plugin instead of an Aperture plugin now. Okay, so that's just okay this. Now I haven't got a huge amount of photos to work with. I haven't got loads of photos I've taken with models or whatever. So what I've done is I'm going to load one of myself, one of my brother, and show you how the program works. Then I'm going to go to Facebook and show you some I used earlier that I've experimented on of celebrities. Basically, I went to Google Images and searched for some celebrities without their makeup on as best I could. And I took some of those, such as Jennifer Lawrence or Jessica Cameron, various people, and I've experimented a little, but I'll show you them later. Now, the first one is just as me, and it's high quality because it is nearly 11 megabytes, but it's not a raw image file. It's not a .raw or ARW or whatever yours might be. It is just a compressed JPEG. And I do recommend, let's just start off by saying I do recommend you use a very high quality image. You go get better results if you're using, say, a raw image file straight out your camera, rather than some really compressed image you found of a celebrity or whatever on the internet, which might be highly compressed, maybe taken in low light as a selfie on a mobile phone or whatever. But if you're a photographer using this program, you're probably going to be using a good quality camera anyway. Okay, now as you can see, it has detected my features here pretty well. You can adjust the points if you want a little bit more, maybe raise that up. Maybe my eyebrow might be a bit longer perhaps there. And it has done a really, really good job of auto detecting the face. Now you can say, oh no, I don't want to trust this program. I want to put the points, each of the points myself, and you can start from scratch and do it yourself, but it's much quicker and simpler if you start by auto detecting and work from there. As you can see, once you've done that, well, it's detected I'm a male. If that's wrong, if it's detected the wrong thing, you can say, actually, I'm a boy under 12, or I'm a girl under 12, or I'm just an adult female, whatever. You can change it from here, the presets, but it's done a good job itself anyway. So where do we go from here? Well, maybe you might want to start off using a touch-up brush and saying, well, let's make the sliders a bit bigger. We make the brush a bit bigger and the strength bigger or weaker. And we can go here and say, there's a bit of a blemish here on the skin. Click, one click and it's gone. There's something a bit unusual here. Let's take that away. Okay, what else have we got? Some marks here, mark here. And you can go with the brush, deleting any of the marks you don't like, any blemishes on the skin, and go from there. But let's just get out of the paintbrush touch-up mode here. You can either say revert to the original image, which will undo any changes you made, and then you can start down here with the sliders, such as face sculpt, change the eyes, change the size of the nose, whiten the eyes, brighten the iris, etc. All sorts of controls here. But why not take a look and see if there's a preset to get you started? Because sometimes if you're using a female image, female standard will be enough. It will just make slight small changes, and that will be all you, especially if you're not a pro photographer. If you're an amateur, you can get away with loading a female image, clicking female standard and exporting, or in this case, male standard. Click male standard, and as you can see, it's hardly any changes. In this case, I think it hasn't made enough changes, especially not for demonstrating the program. But in some cases, like I say, I have loaded female images and hit female standard, and that has just worked perfectly right out the box. In this case, it hasn't quite worked enough. Okay, so we can either adjust the sliders, or we can have a look at some of the other presets, such as you have male standard no lighting, so it doesn't change any of the lighting on my face, or you can say full lighting. That's a big difference. In fact, that's actually done an interesting job there, except in this case, it's not quite right, so we can keep looking or keep adjusting sliders. Now, as you can see, when I hit male no sculpt, that has changed quite a bit, and that is because obviously male standard slims the face a little bit. So when we hit male no sculpt, it's undone that, and it's taken the sculpt off. So if I hit male standard, you can see the cheeks slim a little bit, and And like I explained earlier in the video, this does do face morphing if you want, but you don't have to if you don't want that or don't agree with doing it or whatever. Now we have male skin, lips and eyes only. So that shouldn't include any sculpting. As you can see, no it didn't. It changed a lot with my skin and my eyes. It's really brightened up my eyes, but it hasn't actually sculpted my face. It hasn't changed the proportions at all. Then next we have male glamorous. Again, that's quite a hefty one. That one there really does quite a lot of changes. That basically it's the opposite of your standard male standard. Then we have ones like child, then we go into a lot of female ones, then eventually we get back to males again, and we have male young natural. A little bit too red there, looks like I'm having a heart attack. Then you have male young natural, no sculpt, very similar but without the shape changing of the face. Male young glamorous, again quite a bit over the top by default. Then if you have a male who is between the ages of 35 to 45, there's a special preset for that. And then there's male 50 plus and a few different presets for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go actually reset to the original image. Then I'm going to scroll down past those presets we're just taking a quick look at, and I'm going to go to these where you can add some of the things individually. So you can try to add a smile. In this case it hasn't done much, but maybe if somebody was already smiling it might just emphasize that smile a little bit. Then you can plump their lips up a bit. As you can see, there was a change there. I'm not showing any of my teeth there, but if you were, you could whiten the teeth. That one though, I personally, in all the images I've tried, I haven't found it really makes any difference. And in fact, it seems like when you turn that on sometimes, even if there is teeth visible and it should work, it seems to change something about the rest of the image. I'm not quite sure what it does, but I haven't found that one option works very well. Then you can redden the lips a bit. You can smooth the lips so it sort of helps get rid of the creases in the lips. You can widen the eyes. Sometimes, as you can see, it looks a bit weird, but sometimes it does just do a subtle change, subtle widening of the eyes, and it does work okay. But with pictures of me, at least, it does seem to look a bit like some sort of anime cartoon. So I'm going to undo that. You can then brighten the eyes, which is, in this case, looks kind of weird, but I quite like to do that because I don't have brown eyes, I have green eyes, and I think if you have green or blue eyes, you might want to emphasize that a bit, make them stand out, show the color. And if you don't like what it did by default, you can go over here to eye controls, and there is an iris brightening slider that you can turn up or down or put to 0. Now, talking about eye color, you can turn your eyes brown. In this case, it looks very weird, a bit over the top, a bit extreme. There is a slider, so even if you want it brown, you turn it brown and it looks terrible and unnatural, you can adjust the slider afterwards anyway. But let's just take that off and have a look at blue. As you can see, that one has actually worked quite well, because my eyes were already in this photo for a change were actually quite a bright green. It's just sort of swapped it for a bit of a grey blue, and it doesn't look too bad, but you can adjust the slider like I said about the other anyway. And let's try turn green. As you can see, that hasn't actually made as noticeable a change because I already had green eyes that look fairly bright in this picture, but you can see the difference. And again, there it is, undone. There actually wasn't a big difference. Nose. What if your nose was really wide and you really don't like it and you want to try to do something about that? You can add nose slim. That slims down the end of the nose a little bit, squeezes it in slightly. Again, if you don't want to change actual features, like you're having plastic surgery or something, then you don't have to. Also, if using nose slim isn't enough, you want to add even more of a slimming effect, or you want to use less of a slimming effect, there is sliders that will show you later. Now, you can also shorten the nose. This I'm not too keen on. I'll show you. There, it seems to sort of squash the head down. I don't like how that works personally. Lots of other options here, including smoothing of the skin. As you can see, let me undo that. See all the sort of detail here on the skin, the texture, it sort of removes that. Personally, I don't like to remove too much texture on the skin. I think it looks too artificial, but If you're a professional photographer, you might have to do that, because look at covers of magazines, look at people in magazines, especially on the cover, they always have very smooth, unnatural skin. So that's kind of what you're probably going to have to do if you're a professional photographer. So you can. Personally, I like to leave a bit in. Yes, I like to take the brush here and remove some of the really major points, the real obvious sort of blemishes that really stand out a little bit. But I don't like to take off too much. I don't like to smooth the skin so it's too unnatural. Okay, we can smooth wrinkles. I don't think I have too many wrinkles visible in this picture, but you can if you want to remove some wrinkles. You can lighten the skin, you can add some warmth to the skin. This, if I use this, I'd probably turn the slider down a bit because it made me too red. I can enhance the colour. That is for the hair, and it hasn't really done much from the look of it here, but there should be a slider I can change later. I can redden the hair. There is some change, although it seems to have made it look quite green. It's not green, it's sort of a dark blonde, my hair. You can lighten it. You can darken it. You can sculpt the jaw, so it sort of squeezes the jaw in. But if you do that, you might want to adjust some of the higher up bits, like the forehead here. There we go, because on its own, just doing the jaw, it didn't look natural. Face sculpt. You can lengthen your neck a little bit. That seemed to lift up my shoulders. It didn't really do the neck, but it could be because I got a little bit of a beard here. Maybe that's confusing it. Let's just undo it. It has worked in some cases. Enhance cheekbones. Now, by default, it might be a little bit too low down. You might want to raise it up. And personally, I don't think it looks quite right ever really on me doing that effect. So I'll leave it off. There's various lighting effects, such as a spotlight. There's right shadow, left shadow, tons of lighting options here. Then you get to picture controls, such as making it black and white. Now, the picture controls here are just some sort of presets, but if you go down to picture controls here, if you've loaded your raw image straight into this program instead of using a JPEG or a TIFF, then you can adjust some the sort of standard options you might expect, such as the tint, the brightness, and the exposure. So if your default raw image is slightly over or underexposed, you can adjust it a little bit here, the brightness as well, some of the vibrancy, the tone, and even add a crop if you want as well. Let's discard that. Now you can also do a smart contrast, tonal curves, and temperature. It hasn't got all the options that you'd expect from a full RAW program, such as open it in a more dedicated image editor, such as Photoshop or Affinity Photo, but still, if you want to load your image straight into this, you can probably fix up the main sort of problems, such as tint and brightness and exposure from picture controls here. So now we've sort of had a look at most of these presets. I should note that there is some removes. You can remove the eye color, remove the skin coloring, and a few things at the bottom there. And at any time you can go to the top one and revert to the very original image without any changes. You can also go here and hide it. You can save and manage your preset. So here we can manage it. We can make which one. Now, if we always want that to be the default for the male, we can hit default male here. If we want this to always be the default for the female, we can click it here. And I think by default, that is exactly what these are set to. But if you knew you always wanted the default in most cases to be, say, male glamorous, you could select it here and click it here. You can delete them from here as well. Let's cancel and go to save. So we have made adjustments. We can save it with a name here. We can select which sliders we want to save, or we can save them all. And if we know that these changes we're saving as a preset, we always want to be a default for the male or the female, we can select which one here as well and save it. So we can go here and say my preset and maybe male, and say, okay, that's male preset I'm always going to want to use for the male, or 90% of the time, and click it here, then hit OK, but I'm not going to. Before we have a deeper look at the individual actual presets here, I'm going to have a look up here, then I'm going to show you across here. So starting here, we have zoom options we can hide. We can fit which is what it's on at the moment. We can zoom straight in on the face, which is very useful to quickly get straight in on the face to make our changes. 1:1, which is zoomed in, even, and there is a slider and toggle here. And if we're zoomed right in like that, we can move around the image as well. Can be quite handy. Okay, I'm just got to go to full screen here. Now, if we have a look over here, whoops, to start off with, when you start out, you're going to want a view before and after, because you want to make sure your points are in the right place and adjust them. But then perhaps you won't always want to see it side by side, so you can select this tab here and just see your face, make the changes, and then maybe go back occasionally here to compare it. But you can get just that view. You don't have to have them side by side all the time. You also have the standard redo and undo here. You also have this button, select another face. This is because this program is very powerful. You can have 3 people standing side by side, and when these 3 people are standing side by side, it will detect all 3 faces. But then you select which one you want to do first, hitting continue on the continue button that's with that person. Make the changes to that face, select this, then move on to the other person's face, make those adjustments, then slide over to the next person, and so on. This is where you export the final after photo, the enhanced picture, as a TIFF or a JPEG to your computer. You then have this one, which closes this image once you've completely done and saved and you want to move on to another photo. Now this here is an option that's very interesting, because I rarely, if ever, use the default sort of uploaders in software. So when I edit an image, say in Photos, Affinity Photo, Photoshop, this, whatever, I always normally, my sort of workflow is I export it as a good quality image to my hard drive. Then on the websites, if I want to upload it to Facebook, I use Facebook's website in the browser, or Twitter in their actual website inside a web browser. And I do it like that. A lot of programs you can export directly from the program to these services, but I just don't do it that way myself. And it's the same when I work with video. I don't export directly from Final Cut Pro or iMovie straight to YouTube. I export it to my hard drive first, then manually upload it. But this you might actually want to use. Why? Let's click it and find out. We can show both images. So yes, you can actually just upload the end product if you want to use it as, say, your profile picture on Facebook. We can select this option here, in which case there's not much point really using it. You can just export it and manually upload it yourself, as I was explaining a minute ago. However, you do have this option, show both images, and this will upload basically this here. It will upload a before and after into one image side by side. And we can show or hide these before and after labels. So if you want the text saying before on the left and right saying after, like it does in this preview, you can tick this box or untick it if you want to have them side by side but without the labels. And that is such a cool feature. The only problem I have with it is that if I click here to export to hard drive, I can export as a JPEG, a TIFF, a PNG, and how much quality I want. And in the case of TIFF, do I want it uncompressed or lossless compression? Do I want an 8-bit, 16-bit color sample? And PNG, I can select 8-bit, 16-bit. But when I export to my hard drive, the image file that I export is only the enhanced finished product. You do not get a tick box to export both side by side with the labels like you do in Facebook, which is a real pity. Be a real handy feature, especially if you don't want to just upload the before and after to Facebook. You might want to add it to Twitter or to Google Plus, etc. In a minute, I will show you a way around doing this. I will show you a way to export it to Facebook, download from Facebook, and add it elsewhere. You probably might have figured it out yourself anyway. Now, flip to before. So if you have view after only, we can hold this button down and see the original quickly, just to quickly compare them. Let go and it goes back to enhanced. Hold it down, original image, before, after. Okay. Now, that is most of the main points to look at now, but let's have a look at the nitty gritty, all the fine sort of details. Let's look at all the little sliders. Face sculpt, you can turn it off completely. You have a toggle to turn all of the sculpting of the face off. Let's turn it on and see what you can do. You have a master effect to apply basically how much of the overall effect you want to apply, and it sort of adjusts every slider all at once. Or you have face shape, and we can individually select the jaw or the forehead, or both the jaw and the forehead at the same time using this slider. Eyes, how much shape do you want to change in the left eye or the right eye, or do you just want to change them both at the same time? The same with eyebrows. And if you have somebody who is cross-eyed, this is handy. If you have somebody that's cross-eyed, you can try and fix the cross-eyedness using this slider. Eye widening, I showed you that before. It's to make the eyes a little bit more squint, or to make them very wide and almost anime looking. I don't tend to do that, or at least not much. Mouth shape, do you want to add some more smile to them or less? In this case, with my photo here, it's not really working properly, but it does depend upon the image. Now you can also adjust the upper and lower lip independently, and you can add and remove expression from the face here, which does do very slight something with this image, but this isn't the best example. Blur lip line, then we have plump lips, upper and lower, or both at the same time. Nose, we can do all the sliders at the same time, or we can independently adjust the shortening of the nose, the slimming of the tip, etc. The neck is separate here as well. Then we have restore glasses shape. So if somebody's wearing glasses, it might bend it all out of shape because you're changing the shape of the face, etc. We can tick this and try to restore the shape of the glasses that they're wearing. Then next we have skin smoothing controls. Again, we have a toggle on all of these main categories. We can then adjust the master effect like we could before. We can do the eyes, we can lighten the eye bridge, smooth crow's feet. We can adjust the imperfections, we can try to thin the wrinkles, and if we hover over these, I haven't mentioned before, but if we hover over these, we do get a very interesting detailed tooltip. We can then find the shadows, remove the pores in the skin. You can see the changes there. And we get a progress bar on the image itself showing how much we're applying, which is quite neat. We can remove the shine on the skin or whatever. Texture here, brightness, saturation, size. We can actually skin texture type. We can select it from presets. Is it very rough skin we're trying to deal with? You know, normally I just leave that on default. Same with spot removal. What sort of sensitivity? Only prominent spots, or do you need it a bit more sensitive, such as medium sensitivity, to really get rid of a lot of detail? And right up to maximum sensitivity, which is a 10, I tend to leave it on default. Now if I go up a second, we can view and edit skin area, because sometimes the area it selects isn't enough, or it's too much. It may select some of the hair, or maybe it hasn't selected all the stuff you want to select. So we can go here and hit extend, then say we want the nose, although I think there's a good reason for it not selecting the nose. I think it can mess the effect up a bit. But say here, well, we've got some skin here it hasn't selected because of the mustache. Well, we can select that, we can add to it. Maybe we want this area here selected as skin. We can select that and color it in purple. Maybe we want the ear bit here to be selected. Maybe you want to select some more of the neck and stuff like that. And basically, you just sort of find where the skin is and it's not colored purple, it's not normal skin color, and make sure you go over it with the purple to tell it, the program, that is where the skin is. Cut back is if you have accidentally, or the program has accidentally selected an area which is not skin, such as hair or the eyeball or whatever. We can select that and erase the purple out. We then have size of the brush, detector size, show skin area. We then have default, so what color do you want the skin area to be? In this case, the default is sort of a light purple. We can recalculate the skin area. We can refine the edges. Let's just hit OK. Let's have a look at lighting. This is the first program, and maybe the only program. It was, even if it's not the only program now, it certainly was the first program to allow you to relight a person's skin and face, and it does it independently of the background. So let's have a look. We can move. Can you see the face and how the lighting is moving all around my face, like I'm actually there, and I'm having somebody walk around with a light in their hand or a reflector in their hand, and changing where the light falls on my face. It's almost like it's 3D, and it's almost like somebody's actually there as well, moving a light source or reflector around my face. It works really well. So if you didn't get the lighting right the first time, or you don't have the resources or the expertise or whatever, you can adjust it here, moving this up and down, left and right, or sliding this around on the image. We can also edit the skin area from here as well. We can adjust the contrast, modeling, fix lighting, etc. Here we can adjust the cheekbone lighting and all sorts of independent lighting, including smoky eyes and pout. Now let's move on to the next, which is eyes. We get some tooltips we can dismiss here. You can adjust red eye. So if you have a problem with red eye, you can do red eye removal from within the program. But as you can see, there's no red eye, so just leave it unticked. We have a master effect as usual. We can whiten the whites of the eyes from here. We can clean the eyes. We can do all sorts of things such as the pupils. So if we want, we can, the black of the pupils, we can actually darken them even more, brighten them if that's what you need. We can sharpen the eyes, make them nice and sharp and clear, make them stand out a little. And this, if you have blue eyes especially, or green eyes, perhaps not so much brown eyes, but if you have a nice bright color, like a nice green or a blue eye color, you might want to go to brighten iris and really make that color pop. Although, yeah, now it's starting to look a little over the top. You can darken them and even take the color pretty much right out. But you might want to brighten them a teeny bit like this. That looks fairly good there. You can also brighten them and darken each eye independently. You can even change the eye color. So I like my green eyes, but let's just see what happens here a minute. Okay, amount of change. Then we can change the color. So we can even change it to say like a reddy sort of color. Here, let's do the intensity. There, this has made it kind of almost a rusty red. And you can do the color. You select the color such as red or blue or look purple, which is weird, and the intensity here. But you can also then move on once you've done that, and you can adjust reflection. So if you have a reflection in your eyes like I do here, which actually looks quite nice, I actually quite like that, but you can try and remove it. And as you can see in this case, it hasn't removed it completely, but it's dulled it down and removed some of it, especially in my left eye. In the right eye, it's not making much of a change. But let's see what we can do here. Let's go right eye. So it's right. You're looking at it, not your right. So we can have that at 100%. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing much on this eye, but it's done a decent job on that eye. Then, once we removed any reflection, or if there was no reflection in it to begin with, we can always go to add reflection and select from a preset, such as a big beauty dish, a big beauty dish weak, a small beauty dish, or whatever, and add it. And we can select various ones, including a chapel window reflected in your eyes, or you can have a sunset reflected in your eyes, or whatever. And you can nudge them, so if they aren't in quite the right position, you can move them around your eye to where you want them to be. We then can go on to controls for the mouth and nose. We have a master effect. We have a whitened teeth, in this case irrelevant. Clean teeth. We can whiten the area. We can add saturation to the lips. We can darken or lighten the contrast. We can shape the mouth top and bottom, so we can try and change the shape of the lips, not having much effect in my case for some reason. We can even moisten the lips a little as well. It's having somewhat of a weird effect on my lips because it's sort of affecting odd patches, and it's not in quite the right place maybe on the top there. But anyway, you see the general idea, and it will work better on some photos than others. You have lip hue. You can then move on to hair. Now we have an edit hair area, and this is very much like editing skin. As you can see, it's highlighted my hair in purple, but it hasn't highlighted enough. So we would have to enlarge the brush probably and start masking the hair. So we just find where the hair is and we color it in and make sure it's all nice and colored in. So that tells the program that all this purple area here is the hair. So when we make changes to the hair, it knows where the hair is and what to do with it. I'm only doing a very basic job right now because I'm just demoing this program and giving you a review. But that's the general idea. So then we can hit OK and come out of it. Now we can adjust things like the hair recolor amount if you're recoloring from a preset here. The shine, we can adjust the shine here. We can adjust and lighten the darken, the vibrance. We can lighten, and it's having a weird effect because it's a bit of a low quality image really. It's quite dark in the room I was taking it in, and the picture is a little bit grainy. But that's the general idea. Then we can select from a drop down, so we can try to make my hair a sort of a purple or more blonde, more lighter. We can make it nice bright blonde. In this case, it's not quite working because I haven't highlighted the hair correctly because I was rushing a bit, and it's not a great quality photo. But we can make me blonde if this was a decent quality picture. We can make me more of a reddish or a brownish or a purple sort of color or a jet black. And we can turn up the amount here as well. We can also go to hair tidying mode. Let's just skip over and go to skin coloring controls. Here we have things like color correct, color outside face, temperature, the tint and the exposure. We have cheek coloring separate from the rest, and we can do the cheek saturation and hue, and we can mess even with a tan. So if we wanted to add a tan to me, we can. Then, like I have mentioned earlier, we have picture controls to adjust any problems with the photo that you originally took, such as it being a little underexposed, or the tint maybe is a little bit off, or you want to make it a little bit more vibrant, or you just want to add a basic crop. Now, I was going to open my brother's image, but thinking about it, it's not necessary. I've shown you all the controls. All the difference would be is the picture I would be opening would be much higher quality because it wouldn't be a low quality JPEG. It would be a raw file from a Sony DSLR, and but just know that the studio version at least can open raw images. Now I was going to show you Facebook, and that it's very quick because what I want to show you is here. This is how it uploads a before and after. Now this is not my photo. I don't own the copyright to any of these photos I'm about to show you, so bear that in mind. I just found it on Google Images. This is a photo I found of Jennifer Lawrence from The Hunger Games. As you can see, she's wearing little to no makeup, which is why I picked it. I've sort of brightened the hair, tried to brighten and enlarge the eyes a little, slim the cheeks, etc. Here is one that I couldn't really edit much because it was such a low quality, compressed and grainy image. But this is another actress here, Mila Kunis, I think I'm saying that right. Then here is an actress, a Canadian actress called Jessica Cameron. As you can see, I've taken it, I've enhanced the vibrancy of the hair. She already had blonde hair, but I made it even blonder and brighter. As you can see, I could have took a bit more time because the skin, the hair color is overlapping on the skin somewhat around there. But if you really play around with it, you can prevent that. As you can see, I've sort of brightened the iris a bit there. I've edited the lips, maybe the nose a teeny bit. I can't really remember. I've cleaned up the skin. Basically, just added a bit more vibrancy to the whole thing. That was basically the main change I did. I cleaned the skin and added vibrancy and enhanced the color of things like the eyes, lips, and hair. Now, here's a British actress called Michelle Ryan, and this is an image I found on Google Images of her just walking out in the public somewhere. So she doesn't seem to be wearing much, if any, probably a little bit, but not much makeup, which is why I picked it. I tried to make it as realistic as possible. I don't like it when these images are too over photoshopped. So I think it looks fairly natural. In fact, I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit here so you can see what I've done. Okay. As you can see, I brightened the lips a little there, cleaned the skin, added a little bit of vibrancy to the eyes. I think I might have widen the eyes just a fraction. But it was mostly a very subtle thing. I maybe added a bit of vibrancy to the hair, just a touch, brighten the eyes, maybe little bit of a widening to the eyes and clean the skin, maybe a bit of reddening and brightening to the lips, and that is about it. And if you zoom in, yes, you can sort of see that it's been messed with maybe, but if I zoom out and see the whole image, if you didn't see the left one, you may not really have noticed that it's been messed with from a distance. The one on the right, it looks fairly natural. From the help menu, you can get to things like a quick start guide. You can re-enable or disable the pop-ups. You can check for new software updates, and you can go to support if you need it, and you can go to their forum to talk about the program, talk about things like other people's photographs, or I think if I remember rightly, there's even a category there to share your enhanced picture to get feedback. So what bugs or suggestions have I found? Well, one is sometimes when I add it to Facebook, sometimes it seems like when I do this, hit publish, and it's nearly finished, it seems to, if you've made a lot of changes or made any changes really to the points from their defaults, when you upload to Facebook, it resets the changes you made. So if this here was way out here by default, and I went and changed that, put it where I wanted it, still not quite right, made the changes, uploaded to Facebook, it seems to currently, in the current version, at least on the version of the operating system I'm using, maybe it won't do it on Windows, but on Mac anyway, it seems to upload and then it resets the points. And I'm not sure, but I think maybe the one it uploads is with the points reset, which can be wrong and look wrong. So it just has that one small bug, at least in the Mac version of Facebook uploading, seems to reset facial points. The only real suggestion I have is I would like to be able to export to my hard drive an image side by side, before and after, like you do with Facebook. Basically, I want this option here and this option here added to hard drive export. The only other slight enhancement would be the teeth whitening, because whenever I've used teeth whitening, it doesn't seem to whiten the teeth much. It seems to alter the overall face or something. I'm not quite sure. It's doing something a little odd. I'm not sure. So let's just take a look at a website quickly to see the different versions before we finish up. Okay, here are the additions. You have standard, which is nice and cheap at £25, not too drastic. £40 for studio, still within reason. It only gets more expensive when you go to Max. So what's the difference? Well, to start off with, the quick sort of summary is, I would say, for an average person, Max, don't worry about it. That is purely for real professional sort of photography studios to use, where you can batch process dozens and dozens of photos and faces at the same time for quick exporting, quick sort of batch processing of lots and lots of images every day. If you're a real big sort of photography studio or whatever, maybe have a good look at that. But otherwise, the average user is not going to need Studio Max. But have a good look at both of these. Basically, let's have a look. Most of these are ticked so far. Okay, Studio has plugins for Lightroom, Aperture, and Photoshop. So if you want to go from Photoshop or Aperture or Lightroom to Studio and back, you can't do that with the standard. You will need Studio to get those plugins. If you're working with digital negatives, which are known as RAW images, camera RAWs, or Adobe DNG files, which I personally do, and I think a lot of people do. If you have a DSLR, you're going to be using probably RAW mostly. Then you have to only really, if you definitely want to use RAW, you have to consider Studio, because if you have standard, you can only open things like TIFFs and PNGs. You cannot open things like .RAWs and .ARWs, etc. For RAW file format support, you have no choice but to go with Studio or Studio Max. Studio also has reading and writing of TIFF files containing 48 bits per color, so very high quality TIFFs. Studio also supports conversion between different color spaces. This is something you can't do in standard. You cannot convert different color spaces. So say you're working with Adobe RGB, you can't change it to sRGB, etc. And supports setting monitor and working color spaces. That is also only in the 2 Studio versions. TIFF and JPEG embedded color profile support. Again, working with color spaces, you need Studio or higher. Batch dialog to speed workflow. There is sort of a batch dialog here. Well, there is a batch dialog in Studio, but for full batch mode, to greatly speed up your workflow, you're gonna need Max. Let's just click that, and there's a little video about it if you need to know what full batch automation is. But like I say, the average user, if you know you're never going to want to use plugins and you're never going to want to use raw image file format, then consider standard. But I think you're best off going with Studio. I recommend Studio unless you know for sure you're going to need batch automation. But most users, I would recommend the middle ground, which is Studio. As you can see, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the price is in dollars, but in pounds it's £25, £40 or £80, depending upon which version you're wanting to get. If you check out the website, you can find out that there is a free trial to download, so you can try before you buy. It is available for Windows and Mac. But do I recommend it? Yes, I really do recommend it. I've tried out a few trials of some other portrait programs, and I haven't quite found them to be as good as this, especially not for face relighting, which is very exclusive really to this program. This seems to work really well. Some of the other ones do work really well out of the box, but then if you need to fine-tune things, there isn't all the sliders that are available in this program. So I really, really do recommend this program. Some people, I noticed when I uploaded some of those sort of actress pictures and stuff to Facebook, a big debate started about ethics and should you do face sculpting, is it right, and it's creating a bad sort of standard, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, even if you feel that way, I get that. You can still use this program. You don't have to take somebody and change them into a completely new person by changing the shape of their eyes, their nose, their mouth, their chin, their cheeks, their forehead, and make them look like a completely different person. You can just take a picture, taken maybe with inadequate lighting and somebody with no makeup on, and apply some bit of makeup in, a bit of spot removal and relighting, and still have them look like the same person. You don't have to do plastic surgery in this program, even though you can. So I just want to really emphasize that you can do very basic job with this. You don't have to be a plastic surgeon and change the nose and sculpt the face if you don't want to. So I recommend you check out their trial on their website and just try it out for yourself and see what you think. But I do recommend it. Please like and share this video, and if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as it only takes a few seconds and will help me out a lot. Thanks.